respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the normalization committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
WESN.
Good morning, I'm your friendly neighborhood, scruffy-looking nerf herder, Sean Michael Small, and this is Talking Point on WSND Content Capital. And to start off the week, I thought to myself, there's a point I want to make. After glancing and seeing certain headlines, hearing about certain stories, I tried to shut off during the weekend because it's when you listen to too much politics and current events and news and the state of things, whether international or local, it can be very emotionally draining and to some degree stressful. Because the more you follow the news as well as learn, and it's not a perfected science, it's a constant evolution of thinking and trying to figure out new avenues based on data, which is always going to be incomplete, but you learn over time how populations respond to things. And you see the difficulty of that, right? You see the inefficiency or the limitations of trying to have a centrally planned situation. And you see also the limitations of having it spread out. So individuals in a free market democratic system will have their own initiative, but of course at times it's very difficult then to have perfect information on what the intention on the whole is supposed to be. So that has its own inefficiencies. But you look at how populations respond to things, then understand that some people respond emotionally to things. And then by doing so, you get to realize how fragile various aspects of how our political systems are, how easy they are to be potentially undermined, how easy they are to potentially be ineffectual, go off the rails, not land, not present itself well. We have a situation which is a very good example, or it gives us a good example, of the negative side effects or potential negative consequences of utilizing emotions in politics. If you look at American politics in particular, but politics in both North America and Western Europe, one of the things that you need to consider is to the extent that emotions are invoked with regards to the arguments given, right? I just saw a video this weekend of an American A-list celebrity basically saying, if you're not born in New York, you're not a New Yorker. Implying that Americans can come to New York and live in New York for even 50 years, she clarified. You're still technically not a New Yorker. You could have New York behavioral patterns, mannerisms. You could be someone who goes along with and is able to practice New York culture, enjoys New York culture. You're still not a New Yorker. The problem is, of course, is that that's to some degree an emotional reaction. She believes that to be a true New Yorker, you need to be born in one of the 5 boroughs. But then, what does that mean about being an American? Why is being a New Yorker so sacrosanct, but then to be an American, well, all it takes is to go through the process, and in some cases don't even do that. And then you kind of start to see, oh wait, perhaps her arguments are based on emotion. Perhaps arguments for championing the rights for people to illegally immigrate, perhaps they're based on emotion. Not saying that you can't have asylum seekers, but we in Trinidad know you can't have asylum seekers kind of going off with no control or oversight, because our population demographically had a spike at one point in time pre-COVID. Not everybody necessarily liked that. But the real issue was the uncontrolled, unregulated influx, which then causes its own problems, causes its own strain. But most of the time, immigration is not spoken about on the real consequences. It's spoken about with emotional appeals. They're taking our jobs. Most people don't want to do those jobs. So that, how valid is that an argument? Right? If you really want to do those jobs, you would have been doing the jobs already. They would have been room. When we talk about the practical pitfalls of not being able to offer migrants something sustainable, as opposed to giving away things, now you have situations in various cities that are trying to finance these programs, and private businesses saying, that's not what we signed up for. And New York is slowly becoming a shell of itself. Because, of course, the mayor of New York had a lot of campaign promises that he made that he was not able to keep. All the freeness he promised, that went away once he got into office. It was almost as though one could beg the question, did you not know the situation, generally speaking, how would it be? Were you taken by surprise? Or were your campaign promises a lie? Now we'll see how long Mayor Mamdani will last as mayor of New York, as more and more major financial institutions, many of whom try to position themselves alongside the Democratic Party and liberalism and progressivism, because they're afraid of cancel culture, and they in part helped create this thing. So it's not as though they want to be Republican, but you threaten their bottom line to that degree, because Democratic policies has been hurting their bottom line before, and they were more than willing to tolerate it. They were. But then things went too far, and now all of a sudden they have to try and figure out how to pivot. Because promises were made and promises were not kept. Because Mayor Mamdani had no other way to find the money, so instead of freeness, he had to increase fees. Sounds familiar? Emotional appeals have a very real risk. The risk is they are subjective. They are not necessarily based on objective fact. They are not necessarily based on any sort of objective measurement that can be measured. That is a binary situation. Did you accomplish the thing? Did you reach the threshold? Did you cross the finish line or not? Emotional appeals are based on emotions. Therefore, they're open to interpretation. There's a lot of wiggle room. But the problem is there's also a lot of room to interpret things negatively. And you can't necessarily fault a population who is not seeing any significant efforts for transparency or accountability, real efforts, not lip service. You leave them to their own devices to come up with their own conclusions, and then be taken by surprise. Why? Why are they so negative against us? Well, in part, it's because the results aren't necessarily showing up. But this is a time in our history where I was more than primed, because I did it for the previous administration, at least when they weren't totally off the rails, and I was doing it at the start of this administration. And to some degree, I'll still do it even when they go off the rails, because I think it is objective truth with regards to certain details or facts, right? But it doesn't excuse everything. It can't be used to excuse everything. It can't hand wave away everything. Because now is the time when we are supposed to be struggling. That's essentially what we expected. We expected to struggle. So we didn't necessarily expect the best of results. But somehow, arguably, you have people. I know people that do not like the PNM. They do not like the PNM. They don't vote in their constituency because it's a PNM area, and they think, well, their vote will amount to nothing, so they just don't vote. They didn't vote in the last election because they dropped the PNM. They never wanted to vote for the PNM. And they have just about nothing good to say about this government. No reason to be biased against the government. No political affiliation for anybody else, right? It's not like they were one time, they were a follower of the PP or the NTA. No. They have a cynical view of all of them. And of course, we had 10 years of PNM rule, so they had great incentive to not like the PNM. Great practical incentive to dislike the PNM. Current government didn't even last a year before their criticisms were cemented with regards to what they saw and how that made them feel. Because when you sell yourself on an emotional argument, what you're saying is, I will make you feel good. I will do things that will make the situation feel good. You will feel good about whatever happens. Don't worry, we'll find the money. Things like that. Because these kinds of short and oversimplified slogans, they're easy to sell in the moment. The problem is now when you actually put it to the test, when it's time to actually deliver. Because ironically, you set yourself up to an impossible standard that is very difficult to meet. Because here's the thing, you can never please 100% of the people 100% of the time. You could only try to please somewhat of a majority of the people most of the time. Everybody has their own needs, wants, desires, what they feel is important, what is important to them, and they might be disregarding what is important. Someone in Rio Claro disregarding what's important to someone in Port of Spain, who disregards what's important to someone in Tobago, who disregards what's important to someone, you know, in Arima, who disregards what's important to someone in Mayaro, and so on and so on. So it's hard to please everybody. because it's not as though 1.4 million people, we all have the same exact priorities. Here's the thing though, because I always say transparency works for you. Unfortunately, none of these politicians believes me, and then they kind of just do what they do because they know better, and then they have shocked Pikachu face. Why did it work? Why did it work? We did the mama guy. You're supposed to be mama guy right now. You're supposed to be placated. You're supposed to trust us. Don't look at the results. Listen to what we're saying. We're saying it's not that bad. Why don't you believe me? Everybody wins, right? Everybody wins. The problem is the interpretation of that statement will vary, potentially as much as 1.4 million times. How do you meet the expectations derived from that statement? Here's the thing. If you operated with transparency and accountability, where you went through the motions to say, this is why we're doing what we're doing, this is our priorities, these are the results we hope to achieve. Yes, we understand that you're going to hold us to these claims, to these plans, to these outcomes, but we're going to present it to you so you know what to expect, one, and can appreciate why we decided this over that, why we decided to invest here instead of investing there, to prioritize this policy, plan, area of the government over that area of the government, right? We operate with transparency to explain our thought process, which runs the risk of you criticizing us if we cannot accomplish the goals we set forth. I understand that. But when time comes now and some people are potentially going to be upset, why you didn't prioritize my thing? Well, we already have the explanation. We already tried to show you the process because we have to prioritize some things over other things. And hopefully, if we do our job well enough, you will understand and appreciate the reality on the ground and not hold us to some impossible standard of trying to solve all the problems at once with not enough resources. And who could hold that against you? Who could hold that against you? But we don't have that. We don't have that accountability and transparency. That's too hard. What we have is lazy politics. Easy to digest, short slogans. That's going to make you feel good. That's going to make us look good. That's going to have everybody in a state of euphoria. And listen, it worked. It worked because they won the election, but they didn't just win. They didn't just win. April 29th, 2025. Dare I say, the only people who were upset were the diehard supporters of the outgoing administration. Even neutral people like myself and others on this show, just the potential of change and the positivity of the message, well, it made us feel hopeful. Why not? You want to be cynical in the face of such a positive, inclusive message? Why would you? You know, you see a whole new lineup of parliamentarians and cabinet ministers, some of whom had experience. You know, they made their reputation as ministers in the PNM. This is a good sign, saying all the right things. The problem is the slogans eventually came to an end sometime after the first budget. Because you had the campaign slogan of, we'll find the money. Sorry, when UNC wins, everybody wins. Then you had the first post-cabinet press briefing of, we'll find the money. Then you had the budget slogan, promises made, promises kept. Out of all of those, the first one has very little objective measure. The other two, maybe. But the problem is you essentially promised the world. Did you deliver the world? And to some extent, this is what politicians do, at least in Trinidad and Tobago. They promise the world, can't deliver the world, and then get upset when you're upset that they couldn't deliver the world, because isn't it obvious that it's unreasonable? You can't get the world. We don't have enough resources to deliver the world. But essentially, that's what you promised. You promised the world. You didn't clarify with Felicia Thomas what the limitations were, how far you were willing to go. As far as we're aware, you didn't tell the unions, hey, this is the criteria that we're operating under. These are the boundaries that we're operating under. No, you left it kind of open. You then never clarified publicly, only certain unions will get 10%, not the rest of you. Because you didn't want the other unions to be upset before the election. Doesn't matter to you that they're upset after the election. Promises made, promises kept. Yeah, the increase in the mid-year budget review is expected to be not even 3 billion, 2.8 billion, 2.93 billion in supplemental funds, mainly to pay for salary increases for 62,000 workers, of which you do have 18,000 PSA workers, 20,000 National Union of Government and Federated Workers. I could never pronounce that, I don't know, that acronym for that union. But at least for the PSA, what does this tell me? Potentially, because 2.93 billion is not 3 point whatever billion the back pay was. And not all of the 2.93 billion is going to go to their salaries. Because again, they increased the salaries, right? Whether by 4, 5, 10, but in the case of the PSA it was by 10. So they have to account for that because the previous minister, despite making campaign promises that he guaranteed he would keep, didn't account for it because you never know, it could have been 0%. It could have been 0%. And that's the thing. It seems as though they're trying to renege on the spirit of the campaign promise they made to the PSA. And where does that leave the rest of the unions? One of the, I can't remember if it's Engulf that got the other union got 10%, I can't remember. But of course, you have the teachers, you have the various national security services, you have the nurses, of course, they're speaking more about just salary. When UNC wins, everybody wins. Well, sorry, we'll find the money. What did that imply? Don't worry. Don't worry, but it's coming out of my pocket. Literally, it's coming out of my pocket. That's what a lot of people are saying. And you're telling us not to worry? Are you winning yet? Therein lies the problem. As opposed to saying, when UNC wins, everybody will get a 5% increase in their disposable income, or cost of living will go down by 2%, or when UNC wins, the economy will grow by X, Y, and Z. Or even if you don't give a figure, even if you just make those claims, these are the things we're prioritizing. Yeah, then we could measure them objectively to say, did you accomplish it or not? At the very least, did you not go backwards, right? But no, you said when UNC wins, everybody wins. Here's the problem. The moment everybody doesn't feel they're winning, the interpretations of that was a lie basically gets taken out of the hat, taken out of the box, taken out of the shadows, recovered from the ether, and applied by whoever has that interpretation. You said everybody will win. Anyone that understands populations and statistics will basically say, well, that's a stupid thing to say. Because the problem is people will, to some degree, believe you. That's why you said it in the first place. You said it because you wanted to sell yourself to people, and you essentially acted like a used car salesman. You try to steer people's gaze away from all of the blemishes on the car, the good ship UNC, and try to sell them on, hey, but you know, a Trans Am as your first car, you know, how impressive that would be to the ladies. Something like that. something which, well, why does that, what, is this a good car? Is it in good way? Hey, no, brand name value. Brand name value. Makes you feel good. Makes you look good. Everybody wins. But how do you live up to that? The real question for me is, do they understand this concept that they have put themselves in a position where it's very difficult to deliver? Your diehard supporters, your yes men, will be, yes, yes, we're winning. Even though some of them would say nothing really has been accomplished for the last year, but they're still willing to wait. Only 20% of the time has gone by the way. You don't necessarily need long-term initiatives to accomplish things in government. There are short-term gains. You can't balance out the two. That, to some degree, could be interpreted as the more responsible way to do it, to not just sacrifice all of the short-term for the long-term. Yes, on some level, if the population is willing, that might be the best way. But is it necessary? Probably not. Because now I feel as though, unless you're a diehard supporter, unless you're a yes man, you are liable to not feel like you're winning. And here's the interesting part. Because there might be people in the middle who are still holding out, who are still holding on to hope. And this is all based on perception, not reality. Stick a pin on that. It's based on perception. And those who are still holding out hope, who are technically not diehard supporters, the problem is you run a further risk that at some point in time, if their mind ever changes in the future, they have further to fall. They have greater love that will turn into greater hate. Because again, it's not based on any sort of objective measure. But you can't blame the population for that because you are the one that set the standard. The standard is everybody wins. You wanted the simple slogan that appealed to the most people possible in the most positive way possible. Once people start to perceive things as not being the most positive way possible, they're going to start to question it. Once people start to perceive things in a negative way, they're going to start to look at it and say it's a lie. That's what the population will do. That's how they will respond. Even Obama was not universally loved. Coming down to the end, he was not universally loved after passing Obamacare. He was not universally loved after being the deporter-in-chief, because he technically deported more people than Trump ever did. He was not universally loved when the sheer number of drone strikes under his administration came to light. Because it's hard to be universally loved. It's not that Obama did anything that was, oh my gosh, how could he do that? He didn't do anything that controversial. He ran into the reality where you can't please all of the people all of the time. That's essentially it. You could disagree with his policies or agree or whatever, but the point is, even he was not universally loved. Even Clinton was not universally loved. At some point, people will have questions, and how you answer those questions will then determine how their perceptions evolve based on those answers, how much they will accept you, because it will depend on how much they accept those answers, what they perceive you as, because it will depend on how they perceive those answers. It's not about fair, because you are more than willing to utilize the tool when it was to your advantage. And now that it's coming back to haunt you, you basically want to cry foul. What kind of kindergarten nonsense is this? Right now, of course, the mid-year budget review is coming up. The private sector is looking, this is how it's reported, for the government to move beyond policy intentions and deliver measurable results. Yes, we got a revitalization plan, except technically we didn't get a plan. We didn't get a plan. What we got was not a plan. What we got was at best a list of intentions, not even a detailed list of actionable things, just a list of intentions. That is not a plan. That doesn't tell us what we're doing for each of these intentions, how exactly they'll be implemented, right? The time frame, the financing, the labor force. It doesn't tell us what part of the revitalization plan is first, second, third, how it all fits together, because it's not as though we have the money to just dump on the situation. We're not Saudi Arabia. We can't go and try and build the line. Look how well that went, by the way. As far as I'm aware, the line is over. Mega projects, which made no sense to people that actually knew what they were doing, done before it basically even began. We have a whole revitalization plan trotted out to the population, and no word about what is the next step. No standard or objective to hold the government to account to. Why? Probably because they don't actually have the capacity to say, this is the... Now, maybe at the media budget review, they'll totally prove me wrong here. But given their track record, it seems as though the revitalization plan was to try to get the population to have some sort of confidence that they are attempting to get us out of the doldrums with a big swing, except we have actually no idea what it means. We just know that they want to put things in place. But it's almost like when you have someone working in a kitchen, not even a sous chef, he's like a line cook, and he's like, when I have my restaurant, it's gonna have this bar and that seating and this amount of private rooms, you know, and this feature and that feature. That's what it basically appears like right now. They want measurable results, not pie in the sky promises, because one of the things Dr. I think Vanas James mentioned with the whole fines for coconut products and vinegar products, you know, non-regulated, non-licensed, unapproved products, you know, you have fines for that. And he's like, yeah, the government needs to find revenue wherever they can find it. I'm like, listen, if that's where they have to be scratching to find revenue to help deal with their budget deficit, we have bigger problems, because one cannot finance a government shortfall by fines for specific and limited unregulated products. And I found it very strange that he thought it understandable, because to me, I'm like, if that's the extent of their plans, we ain't going nowhere fast. That amount of money ain't financing any one of these revitalization plan projects. And more importantly, we don't know exactly what they intend to do with whatever money they collect from these increases in fees and fines and taxes. Nor do we know when it's going to stop. And one of the interesting things is when you do things like put taxes and fees and fines in place, it discourages certain activities, and the reduction in that activity might actually cause you to have a net reduction in revenue collected. Unless they're saying Trinis are so worthless, we'll just knowingly break the law. I mean, I guess to some extent, to be fair, that is true. Enforcement in this situation is one of the first things stakeholders brought up. What's the point of increasing the fines if you're not actually going to be able to prosecute, to charge, to actually find the rule breakers in order to apply the fines to them? But the point is, the private sector wants more measurable results, because one cannot feed your family on the vague promise of everybody winning. One cannot pay the bills off of the rhetorical winning that we're all doing right now. One cannot revitalize the economy, particularly the lower ends of the economy, where you need more liquidity churning, on the hopes that everybody wins. Because if we don't feel like we're winning, again, you open yourself now to the interpretation that your entire campaign was predicated on a lie. Economists now have concerns, or intensified concerns, increased concerns about how this increase in the budget expenditure side is going to be financed. They are concerned about increased borrowing, which is again ironic because one of the things that the opposition UNC spoke out about the previous government was their degree of the previous government's borrowing, particularly foreign debt. Now, one of the unfortunate situations now is there is a union that has not necessarily shifted their operations on the winds of political change. Some unions have, and I wonder how long it's going to be before they're publicly going to display their regret, even if they will never acknowledge it. But of course, you have a situation where we're under state of emergency, folks. Did you know? By the way, now we can't protest certain places because people got upset over a police shooting, which looks really bad, but that's okay because despite the fact that it looks really bad, we are not owed an explanation, and more importantly, the protesters are criminals who are threatening the security of the DPP anyway, so they must be treated as such. Let's forget about things like compassion and empathy here. But more importantly, let's use as an excuse to say you can't protest the Minister of Finance. Now, maybe you could get away with the Prime Minister's office, but to be honest, saying you can't protest on the Prime Minister's office is also kind of dirty. It feels kind of wrong. It feels, I don't know, what's that word? Undemocratic. That's what it feels like. So what did the Nursing Association say? They are considering protesting outside ministers' homes if restrictions prevent demonstrations in traditional locations. Now, while I don't necessarily like the idea about protesting the private residences of government ministers, because for the very same reason, it could get out of control. That's the thing. And here's what's interesting. The more politicians rarely rally against such things because they actually are concerned about their own safety, the more they come across to me as not just hypocrites, but stupid hypocrites. Because you wind up the population on your respective sides about the vilification of the other side, right? You don't say, let cooler heads prevail. You don't say, let's be the adults in the room and try to encourage more mature dialogue. No, you double down on your nonsense, on your BS, and you wind up your supporters, right, with all kind of nonsensical rhetoric. And of course, the other side does so in retaliation. And then, whoever's the government of the day, all of a sudden, they're protesting outside of my house. Oh my gosh, this is criminal. I feel under threat. Yeah, but the point is both parties are basically saying the other side is immoral, evil, must be stopped at all costs. The thing is, that's the rhetoric you put out there, so you can't blame the other side for saying it against you. So then now when people think, well, might as well protest the source of the evil, what do you want them to think? How do you want them to act? Why are you then saying, no, be unreasonable to my political opponents, but you must be reasonable when treating with me? Now Minister Padarath has once again, has essentially figured out a way to blame their own lackings that they cannot perceive on the opposition, and not necessarily asking, where did we go wrong? Because he's saying, It's hatred for the UNC, racism and prejudice. Yes, because Edie Stewart, at least for all intents and purposes, looks like an Afro-Trinbagonian. It must be hatred, racism, and prejudice. Nursing Association was upset with the PNM. So I don't know what pipe Minister Paderat smokes. I guess it's legal now, thanks to the PNM. And maybe, you know, if they want to placate their political perception, they should start distributing that to the population, because it's one hell of a drug, apparently. The Nursing Association was not the yes men of the previous administration. They had complaints that extended before, it's the same complaints, before the election. So I don't understand. Is Mr. Paderat so unaware? Is he so blind? Is his logical center in his brain so incapable to realize the issue is not that they want to protest your homes. The issue is you're supposed to be the improvement. You're supposed to be morally superior. You're supposed to be more capable. And yet, one of the unions that doesn't care what your race is, what color your flag is, what emblem is on your polo, right? They just care about working conditions, potential salaries, or benefits required to make the job tenable. That's what they care about. That's what they cared about with the last guy, with a different color, with a different race, with different geographical demographics. Why should they not have those same concerns now? What have you done to address it better than the other guy? You haven't. That's why he has the same complaints. That's why he has the same concerns. And the issue is just that you were not able to do any better than the person that you campaigned and basically claimed, oh, we're better than them. But the results in this case shows that turned out to be a lie. That's what it suggests. How dare you that was mad at the PNM now turn around and be mad at me and mad at my government? What did we do to you outside of not deliver, outside of being incapable? And it's not as though the Nursing Association made this claim just because you won the election. If this claim was made, if the PNM lost, the UNC won, change of government, the Nursing Association said, now we're going to start protesting your houses. All right, you might have a case, at least a better one. But this is in response to policy y'all put in place. Because you're running a country under state of emergency. You know, the very same thing that Minister Stage said, obviously it's not a crime plan. So I didn't realize a state of emergency was more a political suppression plan. Because it's obviously not a crime plan, right? It's obviously not a crime plan. The threats against the government, that apparently was not criminal threats against the government. It was political threats against the government all along. That's the implication. That's what you're setting yourself up to be perceived as with your pathetic attempts of public communications. That's how people are going to, because they're going to look back in hindsight and say, oh yeah, we didn't have Independence Day parades. I wonder why. Because I guess the threat was never about a gang. One random guy in Belmont is going to have apparently the whole national security apparatus say there have been threats against MPs. It was Belmont, one random gangster. Or maybe it's about being afraid of the revolt of the peasants. That's how it comes across, as ridiculous and over the top as it sounds. As well, it should sound ridiculous and over the top, right? Except, I guarantee you, out of 1.4 billion Trinbagonians, approximately 1 billion or so might be the adult population, true adults, right? Or at least adult enough, not necessarily young university students. You know, I don't know, maybe from that 1 billion, you might get around 500,000 who are starting to look at things funny. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, stupid, etc., etc., etc. It's amazing at how stupid a collective can be, especially when they are only accustomed to being fed oversimplified, emotionally based slogans that have no actual objective value or way to measure them. For 10 years, none of these entities protested or made threats on the PNM. Really? Really? Really now? Because one of the things is he said entities. So I'm like, which other entity are you lumping in? And listen, it is sure as we're speaking out against the PNM, I don't know, more or less the entire time of Talking Point's existence. So is it that you are willfully ignorant or just, you know, threats of terrorizing public officials' homes, terrorizing. The Nursing Association are terrorists. The Nursing Association has threatened your life. Again, where's the threat against the government? Please tell me. Was it gangsters threatening you, or was it political entities that might want to march? Because the 19 protests for 19 bullets has nothing to do with the Ministry of Finance, but now I guess you've made it. You've brought that element into the discussion. We will not be intimidated by elements working in the shadows with the PNM. Why is the Nursing Association working with the PNM? They criticize the PNM. Why is it everybody who stands against you has to be a PNM supporter? Is it that you are literally incapable of understanding the fact that you come across as an arrogant, hateful, overzealous, incompetent, worthless politician? And because of that, more than anything else, people are starting to dislike you. And more importantly, have a harder time trusting the things that you say. Media Association answered a question I've had for quite some time. Where is the Prime Minister? When is the last time you've heard from the Prime Minister? It's apparently been at least a year since she's done a post-cabinet press briefing. Why? How is it that you're supposed to be better than the PNM and you come across as less transparent and accountable than that administration with all the bad things that they had going for them? How is it that on certain objective measures, you're technically not even measuring up, not even meeting that baseline, that minimum? And then you want to whine and moan and complain like a little schoolgirl, like a little schoolboy, like a little baby? Oh my God, they're picking on me. This is your objective measure of mature leadership and governance? Because one of the things that Minister Parat has successfully done is he has successfully turned himself into his party's version of Stuart Young, and he ain't even get the succession plan yet. No, all he's done is he's able to emulate all of the negative aspects of Stuart Young's election campaign. And he ain't even campaigning. Hell of a thing. Yes, blame the Nursing Association. They are part of a grand political conspiracy to bring down the government. Yes, yes, the Nursing Association, you know, the one that complained about how things were during COVID, you know. I'm pretty sure you were more than happy for that when you were criticizing the government's response to COVID, right? Why are we divisive? Maybe because of statements like Minister Parat's. Because, and I'll close this, I'll start to close out this section with this. The National Council of Indian Culture, in response to the positive and negative comments with regards to the renaming of Piarco Airport, to be renamed in the honor of Basdeo Pandey. This is the response. I saw both positive and negative comments, but what became clear from the discussions was that our nation remains divided along racial lines. Now, I have not necessarily, now, the political commentary by the public could get very ugly when it comes to social media, by the way, because you're going to mostly get diehards. So if it's UNC supporters, you're going to hear really ugly stuff directed at PNM, and if it's PNM supporters, they'll have really ugly stuff directed at the UNC. And their respective races, both of them. Both of them, right? Which then, of course, makes people who do not fit the expected racial demographic. It makes me wonder sometimes, if you're a PNM supporter who's East Indian, what do you make of some of the commenters on your own team? And if you're a UNC supporter who is Afro-Trimegonian, what do you make of some of the supporters of your own side? Because I just, maybe if I knew more people who are diehard political supporters, I would get those answers. But actually, I don't know that many diehard PNM, UNC people personally, right? I don't be in those circles. Now, he says the nation remains divided along racial lines. Well, because every perceived criticism of the government that the government is apparently too weak, too thin-skinned to deal with, it has to be racism against them. That might be one of the things that's continuing to fuel the racial divide. But that's the other thing. I did not see any racial arguments against the renaming of the airport. If you want to say that the Amerindians' stance of wanting to keep the Piarco name is racist, I might wonder if perhaps you should consider this might be a pot calling kettle black situation. Because if them, the First Peoples associations or community, not wanting it renamed because it's an Amerindian name, if you want to say that's racism, one could argue that trying to remove an Amerindian name for something else could be a form of racism. That's point number one. Point number two, I just thought the idea was stupid. I'll just say it this way. I'm not going to mix matters anymore. I just thought the idea was stupid because one of the things that's connected to Basio Pandey in a negative way is the fact that there is a corruption case that did not end in his favor with regards to the very same airport. That's like renaming the refinery at the center of the AV drilling scandal, the Dr. Keith Rowley refinery. Pick your scandal, right? That's like renaming Napa the Patrick Manning Concert Hall. These are projects that were tied to basically the issues that contributed to the downfall of their political careers. Now, in case of Dr. Rowley, he probably survived the ANV drilling stuff, right? But I couldn't necessarily say we should rename the president's residence, the Dr. Keith Rowley Hall, you know, after the whole merit list debacle. But anyway, why would you want to do that? The legacy of the Piarco International Airport with regards to Basio Pandey is not 100% positive. And to some extent, people who look at the airport, it's not to the same degree of, say, Napa, but that project wasn't necessarily the best results. It wasn't done perfectly. But more importantly, there was active cases, not just in our jurisdiction, but in an American jurisdiction. Why would you think that it would be a positive thing to say, yeah, let's celebrate that? Let's celebrate one of the last controversies of the first East Indian president of Trinidad and Tobago by putting his name on the facility by which he had to face lawsuits and court proceedings and had to pay fines for. I found it was, to some extent, ridiculous. And here's the thing. The only reason, really, why I think A.N.R. Robinson, it's fine to name it after the airport, after the man, is because of what he meant for Tobago on the whole, not what he meant for part of Tobago. And then more importantly, I'm fairly certain he didn't have to pay fines, he didn't have accusations on the construction of said airport. This is the guy that, to some degree, not only ushered in the THA and ushered in a new era of Tobago politics, but then, of course, went on to be Prime Minister, be President. What he means to Tobago, that's significant. Piarco is a little bit different, by the way. It's a little bit different now. But more importantly, the tie that it has to Basio Pandey is not a positive one. Why would you want to bring it back up? Because if you put his name on the airport, it will always be brought up. It will always be there. And then not only will it be there, but then you will have people who will assume that he did it himself, or there's some capacity, the man himself is connected to the decision, and then they'll say, how arrogant could someone be? Yes, he was Prime Minister, but listen, it's not like I'm saying we should actually rename anything in honor of Patrick Manning, or Dr. Youth Rowley, or Kamala Persad-Bissessar, etc., etc. I'm not. The A.N.R. Robinson Airport is a unique situation that has deeper circumstances, that is directly tied to a specific geographical location that is not national in scope, despite the fact that it's supposed to be an international airport. That was a Tobago thing. And renaming it the Basio Pandey International Airport is definitely not a Piarco thing. In fact, it seems as though people, whether the First Peoples or maybe people in Piarco themselves, who have similar perspectives as the First Peoples, they're saying, hold on. You can't just do that just so. But at least one could argue, and it's not limited to them, it's not limited to one race, but I rarely get fed up and frustrated when essentially people see any kind of pushback and they automatically say, racism. I get it, there's racism involved, or there's racist people probably commenting. But if you want to spend all of your life saying everything against you is racism, maybe it's not racism. Maybe at least some of the time the problem is you. Unless, because if it's always racism, what are we doing here? What are we doing here as a multicultural country? As a mixed race, multi-ethnic country? That's supposed to be, according to people, including myself, we do it better than just about anywhere else that I've seen in my limited experience. But you're saying all that's a lie? All of it? Everyone that has a mixed race friend group that has nothing to do about ethnic backgrounds, and there's no quotas with regards to who, well, we need a friend from this race and we need that race. No, it's literally just how many mixed race friend groups we have in this country, just cause. Your racial background, the color of your skin, even to some degree the geographic area where you live, all of those things are by the way. The friendship is because you're my friend. We have things in common. We see the world in close enough ways that we're in just enough agreement that we're compatible. But we're willing to talk it out where we disagree. And at the end of the day, we're true friends, we have each other's back. Why? All of that's a lie? Because if it's always racism, apparently, then that makes all of that a lie. And maybe for people of a certain generation it is, I don't know. I didn't grow up in that time, I grew up in this time. I know how mixing the races was viewed back then. I saw it, let's just say, up close and personal. but that's usually been the older generations. Dare I say, if you push to make this change, I wouldn't necessarily fault people, as long as the arguments are reasonable, to change it back. Because I find wanting to cement such a legacy very strange. But it is what it is. While you're at it, you should petition the Red House to be renamed after one deceased imam. Why not? If we're going to go there. All right, we have our media ambassador in, so we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WSN, the Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We'd help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
If you've gotten to the point where you have the aches and pains and they're on a daily basis, they're not transient anymore, then it's probably gone already a little bit too far, right? So what a patient has to understand, what your audience has to understand, is the fact that you need to pay attention to self now, in that perimenopausal age range.
We're talking about
right?
40s.
In your 40s.
From the time you hit 40,
in your
start to
40s, you know it's coming. You can't escape it, right?
Start to change the way you take care of yourself.
Yes, exactly. And you have to know what options are available to you.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 68-61662 and start building your future.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan, and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
I'm back here and talking about the WSND Content Capital. I'm joined, of course, as always, on Mondays by our media ambassador, acting ASP, Christopher Arun, who is here once again. Let me just, I feel like I, at this point, always need to put this disclaimer. The media ambassadors are not here to talk about the politics surrounding police activity. They're here to talk about the practical, not the politics, with regards to what the experts, the actual police on the ground, think you, the public, need to know to try to safeguard yourself from criminal activity as much as possible, because even in a perfect world, you're still not going to have a police officer on every street corner. You still have to have some amount of personal awareness. And to help with that, of course, ASP Arun, welcome once again.
Hi, morning. Good day to you, Sean. Good day to your viewers and your colleagues. Well, well, firstly, I didn't get a chance to ask you how your weekend was, so I hope it was good.
It was all right.
Yeah.
It was all right. You did send me something late Friday or Friday morning with regards to an accident, and when I was on the highway yesterday, that's one of the things I was like, look how easy this could happen. Because I was trying to tell a friend, it's not about how good you could drive.
No.
It's how crazy other persons could drive.
And then the capability of your vehicle, of course.
One
of the things I noticed over the weekend is that I was up and down between South and Port of Spain a lot. And we observed, based on the weather, there was a few accidents.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I don't know if people still understand that when it comes to road conditions, including the weather, wet roads, you need to lower your speed limit. So I mean, maybe they could one day put it in law that when rain falls or the road is wet, you automatically have to lower your speed.
The funny part of all that is then there's gonna be some subjectivity. When it drizzles, do we lower the speed limit? What constitutes a drizzle?
I mean, that'll be worked out. But one of the things I noticed, that we saw some people did lower their speed level, but then there were others, and then they occupy the fast lane and they would the overtaking lane. We call it the fast lane, it's really the overtaking lane. And some persons weren't adhering to that. We had to have them move to the side and whatnot and reduce their speed, because we have very light motor vehicles traveling at a high rate of speed, almost 100 kilometers an hour in wet road conditions.
With varying degrees of tire.
Yeah, and then the roads are not 100%. So, we would encourage persons that, especially when rain falls, like it did over the weekend, to lower your speed limit the speeding on the nation's roadways. One of the things I did over the weekend was attend a play at the Bmobile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was.
So it wasn't all work?
No. And yeah,
that's good. That's good.
And we police are cultured as well.
It's not that I didn't think you were a man or were not a man of culture. I just didn't think you had the time.
Right.
given the amount of work you do.
I went and saw two famous actresses. It was a great play, Muted. I think the directors or the producer of the play is Batiste. Two kids, two great kids. Ara Miriam and Paris Holder, who I'm acquainted with. So,
of course.
Yeah. And they did very well. The entire cast did very well. It was a nice play, especially the adult section. It was real excellent, very excellent.
We have the talent.
Yeah.
It is actually learning how to utilize it.
Yeah.
Right, and there's more I could say about that,
Yeah.
but I won't go down certain paths right now.
Yeah, it was excellent. It was a nice, relaxing time for me, take my mind off our work for once.
Yeah,
and,
for once. Literally, this
yeah.
might be for once, and I don't know how many years.
Yeah, and we're back on the horse again today, we marching again today.
And one of the things is, and this might not have anything to do with what's recent in the news, but at least to some extent, the topics here is not just with regards to gang activity,
right?
But you might take it for granted, the murder rates reduced, all things are safer, but we don't necessarily feel safer. And regardless of whether we are safer or not, the gangs still are operating, and there's still those concerns of parents. Now, how do you deal with this situation?
Yeah, and the signs to look out for in the relation to your children involved in gang activity. So one of the good things we saw, especially with the play, is that we had a lot of youths.
Yes.
I think there is a program that the same gentleman, Mr. Batiste, is endeavoring to undergo with respect to youth, because he did show a program where Northeastern College, that's my school, I went to that school, and Northeastern College was highlighted as being part of the program, where he's capturing these youths in the school and encouraging them. When I say capture, I mean capturing their attention.
Yes.
And getting them involved in the arts. And I mean, if we could get more youths involved in the arts and away from gang violence, or even away from gang violence totally in any form of fashion.
Sports.
We at the Transport Branch conveyed the Police Youth Club from Malabar to Toko, Toko or Grand Riviere, for turtle watching. Right. So we had 2 full busloads of kids with parents and teachers and whatnot, and the police officers.
And that's a real excursion there, going to watch turtles at night.
Well, apparently these turtles operate on their own time. They come out around midnight.
Right, yeah.
So we had to wait until they came out.
No,
well, not me, but
imagine the kind of field trip environment
that's like.
It
was a nice, safe environment. There was a number of persons out beside the police officers and the youths and whatnot. And this encourages youths to stay away from any type of violence. It occupies their time, their attention. It builds them for later on in life with their families and whatnot. Because this is what we want to encourage. We want to encourage, there were a number of persons with their families at the turtle watching event.
Right.
And this was very good to have families. Because if we bring back our society to the central format of families, we would see less gang violence. We would see less gang activity. The reason for that being is that you see our youths being attracted to the gang for a reason. And they're attracted because it's a sense of belonging. So you have youths, they're not brought up in the proper family environment. You have some that are brought up in the proper family environment and are attracted to the gang violence for some reason, or the gang activity for some reason. But the majority of youths, if we encourage them to have that family setting and bring them away. So we need parents to be involved as much as possible.
Because what you say at this point now, it's almost a cliche or a stereotype, but the reason why is these things, this tends to be a commonly held truth, or it's widespread enough that you're going to have a young man or young woman who, for whatever reason, they don't have a sense of belonging at home, or they don't have a social circle to give them a sense of, because you know how kids are, their interests are not the parents' interests. So then it's like, you don't understand me, but if you have no other outlet now to find that like-mindedness, at this point, I guess you could say don't underestimate the psychological understanding of gang leaders to manipulate people to say, hey, I could give you a sense of belonging. Just kill this person for me.
Yeah, and that is what we are seeing. And what we see is we're seeing a majority of young men getting involved in gangs. Coincidentally, it is June is Men's Mental Health Month, you know, and we will want to talk about that later on during the month, of course. But you know, you see our young men being attracted to gangs because, again, it's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of family. It's a sense of belonging to something that could help you. And then again, one of the things we observe with the young men is that they don't see further. They don't see their future in front of them. They don't see themselves living past or beyond that point. So it doesn't make sense. So this is why you have this senseless killings and whatnot, because the gangs, they don't see themselves going any further than they are right now. So their mental capacity, their mental thinking, their thinking is that, listen, I'm going to do this because I belong to something.
Well, also couldn't it be that, look, usually this is what tyrants do. They don't want independent free thinkers. They want people who will obey instructions.
Yeah, so that's the ultimate goal.
Them to not think about having, because that is also a Hollywood cliche. Once the gang member starts thinking, oh, I could have a life, a future. It's like, no, you're not supposed to. No, the gang is like, no, we don't want you to have a future. We want you to die for us.
And when we see our young men, especially young men, because there are young ladies involved in the gangs as well, and when we see our young men at YTC and they're exposed to what jail really is and what our criminals are experiencing,
especially when they're younger.
When they're younger, and we have cases where our prisoners in jail who have made these mistakes come out and confront these young men and say, listen, this is what it's really about. They get to leave and see their family at the end of the day. Their child can't visit them. Their family can't visit them. Their mom can't visit them because they're in a hospital bed lie down, or they're dying, and they can't leave to go and see them. So they try to get that point across, and we've seen some changes in regards to that.
And I guess this is the key, to try to capture them, rhetorically speaking, before they're past a certain point of no return. Not that they're totally irredeemable, but it gets so much harder now because then you get the 21-year-olds who they're like, oh, so what if I go into prison? So what if I get gunned down?
Yeah, because I'll meet my colleagues in prison.
Yeah, my
partners.
Yeah, you know, I'm fine there.
Yeah, I'm going to be looked out for in there.
Yeah.
My team is in there, basically. It's a gang. So, and we call them a team. Yeah, it's a gang. My gang is in there. They're going to have my back.
Now, one of the things in the current economy, I think, for a lot of parents, first of all, one of the issues I believe why we have this village that went away is because I'm not saying that it should have been prevented, but we didn't necessarily understand the implication of the times when both parents were working, and now when the economics caught up and you need two parents to work just to maintain a middle income household, right? Now who's left, right, to take care of the kids? You know, there's not enough aunties and grannies and grandpas and uncles, right? Especially since some of them would have been stay-at-home people. Not anymore, everybody has to work. And even with all of that income, a lot of extracurricular activities cost money, and not all parents could afford it. So there should be things like certain police initiatives and youth clubs that don't cost, and if you could expand more about that.
Yeah, of course. Well, the police youth clubs, they are, of course, voluntary. They are open to members of the public to have your children assigned to them. We see there's a number of youth clubs. I think there's as much police stations as there's police youth clubs, and they encourage members of the public, especially if you have kids who you want to get that attention away from the tablet and the devices and the environment. You have them come here, so they are like-minded children and youths and whatnot, and they build their self-esteem, they build their goals, they help them with understanding where their future is, and they help them and they encourage them with these activities like the turtle watching and visiting this location or that location, so that they can have an input in their own lives they can see the direction they want to go. The police officers encourage them. They might do some looking at particular jobs. You know, not everybody could be a police or a fire officer or a nurse or a doctor or whatever. You know, they also encourage them to do what they call them?
Vocational?
Vocational, yeah.
Which, there's also that issue in the country where why is it that it's like, oh, this is the last resort kind of thing, whereas in certain European countries, it's like, no, these are careers.
Yeah, of course.
And to some extent, one of the ways to help kids in this situation, I would argue, is, well, if we don't have this stigma of being a carpenter as some fourth-rate profession, then that sense of accomplishment now will actually be greater, and we kind of actually need more plumbers and carpenters and what have you.
Sean, I know people who selling doubles making more money than police. Well, police constables. That's how it is right now. That's the reality of it now.
But you mentioned digital devices. Have you observed if we've reached a point, because obviously I didn't grow up with devices, you didn't grow up with devices, that it's causing a disconnect and potentially giving a greater window of opportunity for gangs to hook young men in with their pseudo-social relationships and you know, that's false sense of belonging, I would argue, in the long run, right? Yeah. Because they're disconnected from their social circles, from their family, you know, they're so insular. But on some level, even for someone like me who technically is an introvert, one of the things that I always found very enjoyable in my 20s was all of the different networks of people who I knew and communicated with and befriended on the internet, you know, which at this point now everybody grows up and moves on. Yeah. But back then when we were all young, you know, it was that my generation, you know, we had friends in all over the world who we've never met and never seen physically, you know, like-minded situations that we couldn't get locally at times. Yeah. And that might not be quite as negative, obviously, as a gang. To what extent are we allowing the gangs more access or more room to influence because of it?
In terms of the
in terms of the devices and the fact that, you know, it's just, we're so insular now, but we still crave it. I think that was the point I was trying to make with regards to all of the foreign contacts, even when you're introverted and you're in your room, but you still crave group activity, group connection. Well, and for our young people now, some of them, as you say, they find that sense in the gangs.
Belonging. So what you see now, you see like the dynamic changing from communication on social media to popularization of social media. Like you have particular songs being sung. You have that encouragement. So the gangs have now infiltrated social media in the sense of they ply their music and their trade using social media to attract a number of persons. So what you're seeing now is young people being attracted to that hype. And the hype may not necessarily be positive. So you have these persons that might be affiliated with gangs using social media to gain popularity. So it's about popularity. I saw a very positive post by a young lady in which she spoke about, I think it was yesterday, and she spoke about growing up of ill means, of poor means. Yeah. Right? And she was able to overcome it. And she was talking about in the sense of she had lessons teachers. And her mom had to work taxi PH to get money, and she would have this big wad of cash she would have to pay the teacher with. The teacher now, Mr. Joseph, recognizing, well, look, I think he was a maths teacher, and he recognized, well, listen, this young lady and her mother are trying, and they have poor means. He said, listen, don't pay me, keep me money. Right. And she was so thankful. She said, you know, this happened years ago in her life, and she has now excelled in maths and the other subjects and whatnot, and because of the additional lessons. And she was so grateful and thankful to Mr. Joseph, and I just want to mention him because, you know, kudos to him, that the message she was bringing about that there are still nice people out there, there are still good people out there, people who recognize the struggle, and that was a positive message. And you know, you don't see young people coming out and talking about that positive message. We all go through positive things in our lives, negative and positive, and we don't highlight the positive.
I think it's very easy for kids to underestimate what a good teacher means for them.
Yeah.
As opposed to you fall into the hype and you think, hey, this is like-minded connections, when the reality is it's to some extent fake connections, because at the end of the day, the gang leader, he ain't going to be right next to you when you're committing a robbery or when you're shooting somebody. No, he's sending, exactly. You know, he ain't even touching the gun. He might not even give you the instruction. He will have somebody else give you the instruction, right?
Correct, yeah.
So we'll continue the conversation, but we have a money line call. Good morning, Ania.
Hi, good morning, Sean.
Morning, morning.
Also, good morning to the ASTBM.
Morning, good day.
Morning to you. Now, firstly, when the police officer do good, I will say good things. When they do bad, I will complain. Now, I want to commend 2 officers last week, I think it's last week Thursday. My car break down on the highway close to True Value, right? The first guy behind us, behind the car, he stopped. There was an old granny, an old papina. He came to my assistance, right? He helped me push the car, you know, a little lower down. And then the police officers now, after the man had left, the police officers and them were coming up, right? And they saw what was happening. They saw all the cars going. All the cars was on a right away. The light was on green and the road was in a mess. Everybody flying. So they stopped. They stopped and they came to me. And they asked me if everything all right. I say, well, officer, the car break down. They helped push the car a little further down by the bus shed. So I want to thank them.
Okay.
I want to commend them for the good job they have done. They have done for me.
Yeah.
It's not only time and this thing, but they did something good, right? It was 2 young officers. They know who they are. I didn't even remember to tell their names now because of the situation. But anyhow, I want to thank them very much, and I want to tell them to keep it up. Keep up the good job. So I will say everything good about all, you know. Yes. And again, my second thing is, right now I'm so sad and heartbroken to hear about this 12-year-old. It's alleged. I got the message just the day before, right? And I heard about that. I want to ask the officer, officer, why is it we have so much of criminals roaming the place? Could you tell me why? We all come from mothers who's doing all these things, all this raping and killing and traumatizing people. We all come from a woman. And how they could have the mind and the guts. Oh, God, tell me, a 12-year-old child is not a woman yet. It's a 12-year-old. And they just rape the child and kill the child. Officer, I have that pain because I have children and I have grandchildren too, and I'm feeling it. Just like the family, just like the mother, I'm feeling it too. You understand? I can understand. Why is it big men have to do little children and other people those things? Officer, I've been calling for the hangman rope. That is what I want. I want the government to go in parliament and do something about that. Officer, it is ridiculous going on now in this country. We can't take it no more. Every morning you get up is a killing, a raping. Oh, God, man. And then you see it, parents will come out and say, Not my child.
Yeah.
My child is a good child. Them big hard back men and them, it has so much a big stone in the river all about. Go there and do all the things. Don't hold on to a little baby. What all you could take from a little baby? That is advantageous in this country. And I am calling again for the government. Government, we can't take it no more, you know. It's so much of raping and killing. Look, we now had one about a month or so with that little baby. I just still remember that baby. You understand? Because that innocent baby is an innocent 2-year-old. And to come back now and to is a 12-year-old, oh God, we can't take it. Something has to be, so all you have to do something about it. I am advising you to send for the Scotland Yard detective and them to come and do what they have to do here. All this money spending on all types of things. All you spend money on this, all you changing this. Send for the detective and them for them to come and do something here. It's too much for me to bear. We wouldn't have no little children just now. We wouldn't have nobody just now. We wouldn't have no man, we wouldn't have no woman for them young generation that's coming. Oh God, all you do something. It's too much. It's overbearing now. Get the hangman and put them high and hang them criminals and them I say. Thank you very much. It's overbearing now.
Thank you, caller. Yeah, I haven't necessarily spoken about that situation yet. There's not much to say except what the caller expressed. It's one of those things where, and I think, yeah, we had murders before, but the vast majority was what, gangland killings and the like. Or maybe domestic stuff, but at least I would argue, while the details, of course, will vary, but it's not as shocking and as devastating as things like this.
Yeah, I mean, condolences to Mercedes and her family. I mean, it's a very sad day when a 12-year-old...
I think, to be honest, there's a part of me that didn't necessarily want to touch on it yet, in part because there's not that much details, but also we just had the 2-year-old in Tobago. You know, we just had whatever situation that came before, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And at some point, the caller's right. You know, it doesn't have to be 600 children for it to be a pattern that is going to be, you know, it is, for those who are in it, I'm not that deep in it as a member of the media, but for those who are in it, you could be easily worn down by these stories.
Sean, I mean, because somebody who has worked on
these types of cases,
special victims, rest assured, I mean, she did ask for the police. It's really did. I mean, we worked tirelessly to address these reports. We had thousands of reports in special victims. We still do hundreds and thousands of reports involving children. And we go out there as police officers with Children's Authority, with Ministry of Health, with Ministry of Education, to assist these children to overcome crimes committed against them. I mean...
Because yes, there's a lot that we do not hear. Right. We do have a caller from Claxton Bay waiting. Sorry. We'll take the call. Caller, if you're still there, good morning. Sorry for the wait.
Yeah.
Go ahead, caller.
Hi, good morning, Sean, and to the professor there. You know, it's so sad for every day, boy, for we to come on and only hear about sad news, killing, people coming into people's house and killing them. You know, you reach a certain age and you're afraid to go outside because when now that you retire, you're supposed to be living a little peaceful life, going and get your little things, come back, coming to kill you. But the point, two of the serious things in this country were what we allow from not now, from as far as back as time go by. You see You see that thing of respect and the truth? We allow that to go out of hand. We allow, Sean, you remember I tell you, with people believe. You can have your belief, Sean. I can have my belief. But when we come to what is the truth, that's what we have to deal with, you know. What is the truth? You understand? Everybody can have their belief, but it all comes down to your truth. So we have people who believe in race and religion and all this kind of nonsense. That could be their truth. But that could be their belief. But when we come to what is right and what is wrong, that's a problem we're not dealing with. Respect for each other. That is one of the hardest things. And if we teach people to disrespect others because maybe of your color, because you think that you're better than them, all this kind of nonsense is what have this country in this state today. How does we really change a situation like that? How does we come and we tell people this is wrong and this is the right way concerning to your belief? How does we deal with that situation? After people believing for years that what I've been doing, which is wrong, I've been getting away with that as the right thing. How does we change the mindset of our people like that? How does we do that? So we lead with these things, and you see lie, propaganda, and misinformation. That is what we end up with. And people just going down a road. You have to ask yourself, today might be me. Tomorrow might be you. Could be the officer next. Because the way how people go in, it's like they have no care. And we have to blame the people in the parliament. Because here what's going on. If you are in parliament in the highest office and you have people that is wrong, but not supposed to be there, then all these things will continue and worse will happen. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah. Thank you, caller.
I mean, one of the things the caller is highlighting is the need for us as a society, both callers, for us as a society to really do a lot better and a lot more.
Because, as you say that, my read of the case, based on what is known and reported, is that it would be very hard to have more child protections that would successfully prevent something like this, because she's put in her car to take a short drive to go home, and in that short window, that's when the attack happens, right? In what should be a relatively safe situation, that's when it happens. I say relatively safe. I don't know if how many other occupants in the car there were, who they were, or what have you, right? And to say that, you know, there's going to be some rule of law, because at the end of the day, I guess certain deviant behavior, they're just going to assume, they assume they're not going to get caught. Right? That's just how it goes.
So, Sean, you know, I think we've gone past the acceptable behavior being that our children are protected amongst the society. I think that listen,
because you know, traditionally, even when we were small, to see small children on their own going to school, and now that's the first thing that I thought about with a case like this. I'm like, I don't know how much longer we could be doing this.
I mean, we see it every day. We see children being they're taking taxis, they're taking maxis, they're taking public transport, and perusing the length and breadth of children. We have kids going from probably Toko to Port of Spain to school. You know, like if you want to go, you know, you want to go a best school in Port of Spain, you will leave your home, and we have kids traveling at 4 or 5 in the morning. You know,
no, but some of them primary school age.
We're talking about primary school children.
Okay, from Toko to Port of Spain primary school?
And, you know, because of the economical situation that exists and the parents have to work and, you know, and they're up very early. We have kids up at probably 4 in the morning getting ready to go to school for 8 o'clock. And, you know, they're perusing, they're traveling and whatnot, Trinidad and Tobago. And I think we've reached a stage where we may have to allow them to be supervised on these trips. We might have to allow our kids, when they go into the mall, we may have to drop them off to the mall. We may have to drop them to the school. We may have to take them here and there, as opposed to having them travel, because it seems that as much as possible and as much public awareness we try to create and have persons look out for kids and look out for vulnerable persons in society, even the elderly and the infirm and whatnot. It seems that we have to do a lot more.
I was informed too, I think in 96. And I spoke about this before, maybe with you or maybe one of the other media ambassadors. There was a boy in my school that had a knife.
Right.
He never used that knife in school. If he was having a fight, if he never pulled it out in school.
Right.
I only knew he had it because he kind of glanced it, like he kept it in his bag. I think he might have been one of these students. There was at least one student in my class. It might not have been him specifically. They were waking up as early as 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
To come to school because they was somewhere far in east in 1996 coming into Port of Spain. And it's one of those things where even then, I think he had that knife. It wasn't for school.
No, protection.
It was for protection when he was traveling then. And we're talking about someone who is probably not even 14 yet.
Yeah.
Right? Back in 96.
Yeah.
This is 2026 now.
When it seemed to be a lot safer.
When it seemed to be a lot safer.
In 1996, yeah.
Right? So
you could have left your house open, you know.
By 1996, we already got robbed. So
yes.
our home was already pillaged, right? Like full out.
Yeah.
You know, we come back from Tobago,
but where I
gone.
So. Right, but where I grew up in the East, we hardly had reports of that nature and whatnot.
Back then?
Yeah, back then.
Yeah, but now?
No, it's prevalent. No, yeah.
So the problem is this though, and I feel like this is a situation where I don't want to politicize it because I don't see the benefit.
Yeah.
Right? What is Parliament going to do? What law are we going to put in place? The police literally have to be in whatever the stretch of road was to catch it because she was killed. It's not about the consequences after the fact. There are always going to be people who think they're not going to get caught.
Yeah, we don't blame the parents, of course, for allowing a child to think that they're safe in society and travel and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, any parent would think that their child was safe.
We've done it for so long.
Yeah, we've done it for so long, you know. And I don't know how the police could have helped in that. It seems right now unavoidable, except for the intention of the perpetrator.
And this goes back to the point that you were making that I wanted to make. Society.
Yeah.
Some of these things, the greater impact to try to prevent it is not going to necessarily come from law enforcement side. You know, work has to be done in society.
Society, yeah. Our cultures and behaviors have to change. It has to change for the better. We may have to go away from just supervising to actually performing the duties ourselves. So instead of supervising or have somebody supervise, instead of having society supervise our kids, as I said, we may have to be the ones to drop off and pick up and that kind of thing.
You see, I mean, both of us said it. Both parents working, who have the time. Now that said, I know one of my friends, he was working, his wife was working.
And somebody had to stop working, I guess.
No. They had to, he just ran himself more ragged. Right? You know, somebody had to drop, somebody had to pick up. They had to figure it out. Because his daughter at 4 was not traveling on her own to go to school. I can guarantee you that. He was not about that life. Right? So, but one of the other things when the callers said, and I think this is part of the problem as well, especially with, not necessarily with crimes like this, obviously no one's going to say, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. No, it is a big deal. But then now the whole, how do you solve the problem? You know, where do we go from here? Here's the thing about truth, caller. Even science is not only objective truth. Because what is thought to be true in science today could be disproven tomorrow. Right? So now that you have a whole host of people now saying, this is what needs to be done, that's one of the issues with democracy. It really is hard to actually get anything done.
All we could probably do, Sean, is be more vigilant. I don't see how this was avoidable, this situation.
In the current climate,
But
that,
for future...
Think about it. I can't fault you for that statement, but think about the implications of that statement. That we are going to have some fraction of child killings that is literally statistically, if it's not this child, it's that child, unavoidable because of how we've allowed our country where we've reached. We have Sanford on the line. Caller, good morning, you're on here.
Morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, ASP Arun.
Good day, good day.
ASP Arun, you said something just now. How our behaviors have to change, right?
For the better, yeah.
Now, let me say this. This change that you're talking about, not going to come voluntarily. So it has to be forced.
Caller? Caller, I think.
Oh, yes.
Right, yes, you're back.
Yes, yes, I'm saying that the change is Arun is talking about the behavior, not going to come voluntarily. This is something that has to be forced on the society. Because Trinidad and Tobago at a crossroads right now. We are having back to back state of emergencies. Another one coming. And I do have a problem with it, you know. I don't have a problem with it. Because the society is at a place where the lawlessness is Trinidad and Tobago. That's where it is reached now. If you look under in a dictionary, it should say lawlessness. If you're looking for the meaning of lawlessness, it should say Trinidad and Tobago. Remember when Bukele Sean had to have what he calls another state of emergency called a state of exception. And they had to pick up thousands of people to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
When I look at how many detention orders that Mr. Alexander has signed, not many, you know. I think a few hundred. Probably this is the way the society, it has to go to let the society understand, hey, something has to give. There is no good answer to get this situation under control, you know. There's no good answer. Because we have criminality at all levels of the society. All levels. It is, if you listen to your last two callers, Sean, that is how a lot of people are feeling. That like there's no light at the end of this tunnel. None. I spent the last few weeks, Sean, I haven't called you for a while, only last Friday, going around, looking at stuff that I'm going to talk about another time. And that's why I could say this. There is no good answer, but something has to give. Something has to give. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Yeah. I mean, Sean, when you look at society now, the social interventions that the TTPS has put in place. We talk about the youth clubs.
Yeah.
We talk about social media. We have social media activists. We have social media ambassadors. We are on all platforms, if not all, most. You see the TTPS venturing into schools, into neighborhoods, into homes, and trying their best to assist persons. Well, I mean, the caller is right. There is need for change. And he's right in the sense that it may not be voluntary, it may be mandatory. And when you look at the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, you look at the Children's Act. The Children's Act speaks about negligence. Now, it's negligent to leave a child under the age of 18 home alone. You get arrested. You can get arrested and charged for that. You know, the officers do use discretion. So you can't leave a child who's deemed under 18 home alone. Yet we have children under 18 traveling alone, unsupervised. Some might say, well, the taxi driver supervising them. I don't see how a maxi driver is supervising 14 kids in a maxi. It's possible, but nonetheless. The laws are there to some extent. What are we going to do? Are we going to make it mandatory to supervise children at all avenues? Are we not going to be able to drop off our kids at movie town to watch a movie with their friends unsupervised, I might wait in the car, outside in the car park. But are we going to have to reach to that stage?
The problem is, it worked because we informally made it work.
Right.
But now the behaviors are not in line with the standards of allowing the informal status quo to
we
work.
have persons preying on these children from all avenues, from all angles. It's basically an attack.
Listen, I know of one case where you have children preying on children.
Yeah. Yeah,
and the people in authorities essentially want to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, yeah.
More on that in the future, and perhaps I might have mentioned it to you before off air, because I can't go into full detail on air just yet. But that is an active situation, and, it involves multiple victims and multiple perpetrators in just one institution. But this whole thing about having to force it, because like we want to be laissez-faire and free and informal and not serious and not formalize things. Because, I mean, you're basically pointing out, if we try to formalize things, that's going to be complex and difficult, right? What does it mean now to have always be supervised? How do you do certain activities? Because you don't want the parents to be in the line, right? But then you still need parents to be around somehow. So like, what do you do? What does it mean? Because parental supervision doesn't mean the parent has to be in the room with the child, but the parent has to be in the house. So then you have to be in the cinema with the child, the theater, or just any.
And when you look at different jurisdictions, certain jurisdictions have now indicated that parents will be held culpable for the actions of their children at the mall, at the school. So we are looking at different jurisdictions. Are we going to implement that in Trinidad now, where Trinidad and Tobago, where parents will be held culpable for the actions of their children, and now it will become mandatory that children be supervised at all times?
Let's take the comment, because I think it's directly after this. No, the other comment. Some loopholes in the systems to address. Here's the problem. Technically, you're not wrong with the comment, right? It's some loopholes in the systems to address. And I think that's basically what the comment is pointing to, some of the things you pointed out. The problem is the solutions will also have loopholes. I think that's what you're getting to. Not and Mr. Sanfano also said it as well. I don't know if he meant it with regards to this specifically, but there's no good solution to some of these issues, because at the end of the day, this murder, and it seems as though it was a sexual assault / rape murder, right? Which, it's a 12-year-old, so I won't even pretend to think I know what that father is feeling right now. Let's just be frank, right? Really, I don't. So the loopholes that were exploited in that system is very hard to address. That's the key thing. And to kind of, you address it not by trying to put a patch. There's almost no patch really, unless you have.
It appears to be unavoidable.
Unless you have cameras on every street corner, drones on every road, policemen on at least every other street corner, right? You know, like, and we just don't have the manpower for that or the resources for that. The other way to tackle it is not necessarily to address the loopholes, but to address society, to try to lay the foundation. But I think this is where, and you agreed with Mr. San Fernando, it has to be forced, because we are accustomed to operating a certain way. It's not working, but human nature is, I don't care if it's not working. I don't want to change. I want you to change whatever you have to change to fix it, so I don't have to change, but the problem is gone. And sometimes it's literally too hard. It is just not possible. I think part of it too is, maybe you always had this kind of deviance. It's just that we only now know about it now.
To be honest, I mean, when you look at historically, there has always been crime and criminality and these type of offenses.
But like crime against children and
there has always been this case.
Yes.
When you look at, I think it was in the 70s, you had the case where they call him the Beast of Bish, and he assaulted 2 young ladies. I can't remember their names. And that was a big thing in the 70s. I think he died about a decade ago, having been released from prison. But you saw that it's just, it may have seemed minute at that time, like a one-off, but it has always been there. It's just that you have more the population is bigger now, so you have more. So you have more crime now.
You have more deviants now.
Yeah. So that's basically it.
Because listen, all of the domestic horror stories, right? That seemingly everybody sweeps their family business and you wrong, they don't want it. You know, listen, my family business was who quarreling with who every other weekend. Other families have more serious things swept under the rug. On some level, some of these things go too far. They create victims. Those victims become perpetrators. They create more victims, and it escalates, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah. And but here's the thing, because the caller brought up Bukele. That is a situation where the population agreed to, accepted extreme policing.
Right.
Because that's what it is. It's extreme policing. I think it's an open, known fact. There's probably some innocent men. Or at least innocent for what they're accused of, maybe not totally innocent, in those El Salvadorian mass factory prisons, I guess. Right? But the population is saying, no, we want to change, we're sacrificing that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of persons in society now call for the El Salvador method, the El Salvador methodology.
But you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Why you lock up my son? He's a good boy.
Right, and then, you know, a caller indicated, you know, we want back the death penalty. The thing with the death penalty in Trinidad is that for Trinidad to trade with European countries, we can't have a death penalty. So I don't know how the government is going to overcome that.
Well, I don't. That's an interesting point. I don't know.
Yeah, we could get blacklisted for trade. So we would basically we wouldn't be able to sell bananas to France
because of their politics.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that more. There's the thing, even if it might not be that straightforward, I do suspect there's at least some truth to that because of how politics works in 2026.
Yeah.
But I think also it comes back down to the fact that, look, death penalty technically never left, right?
It's still on the books.
It's still on the books.
But because of politics,
yeah,
international politics, you won't be able to really implement. That's why that's one of the reasons they can't implement it.
But here's the thing though, and we're more or less out of time, so I'll kind of leave this hanging and go too deep into it. But I remember saying sometime before, something the effect of once the population gets fed up enough, that's when you look to somebody like Bukele, like Trump.
Yeah.
You look to someone who is...
You give up certain...
Well, because you're saying this is the standard of politicians, right? This is what we expect to be presidential or prime ministerial, and it's not working.
Yeah.
So let's look for the radical, right? And both of them, you could argue, is radical in different ways, and there have been reports, different parts of Europe, different parts of Latin America, and so on and so on. Trump like this, Trump like that. And my point is, it doesn't have to be apples to apples, just like Donald Trump. Doesn't have to even have necessarily quite the same political leanings. The real issue is not that he's Republican or conservative or this is his style. The real thing is he's an outsider that says, I could fix it. Because arguably, American politics became very corporate and they wanted an outsider. And we have the same thing with financiers.
Yeah.
We might be so desperate to find someone who is not beholden, at least to our perception, to financiers. We'll take some radical and, you know, you get what you pay for, and we'll see how that happens. But one of the things is, I do wonder if Trinbagonians are aware of the fact that they will, ironically, be the ones who will opt into this type of person because of the failures from the people who they chose in elections before.
And Sean, I'm not trying to make a case for the state of emergency, definitely not. But when you look at the crime now, how crime is now, the state of the crime, how crime is in society now, the plight that the citizens are under, right? Some people might indicate that it warrants a state of emergency.
I'll say this. I think
especially with the gangs.
Mr. Salmano said he doesn't mind the state of emergency.
Yeah, people don't mind it. It doesn't affect them as much.
The issue is, one, what does it mean for protests and the politics moving forward?
Right.
And two, and this is again not necessarily the police's purview, what is the long-term plan with the state of emergency so that the results stick as opposed to it just keeps things suppressed. Because I fear the more you keep things suppressed without any kind of way to ensure you have long-term gains, I do wonder if it's this bad under state of emergency, how bad will it get if the state of emergency will end it?
Well, I mean, the state of emergency is meant to aid the police in a short-term level. It could never mean long-term. It could never be long-term. The police strategy in crime fighting must be long, medium, and short-term.
Yes.
Right? So this is an aid in terms of the short-term.
But some of the things that, like with this murder, it's outside the police's purview for the most part to affect change significantly enough to try to prevent a murder like this.
And you're going to get these one-offs. You're going to get
but
I don't need to minimize the burner.
It's one-offs in the sense of the perpetrator, but for society, it doesn't feel like a one-off,
No, it doesn't feel one-off. I mean, you've been at how society sees it now, and what I call as indicated as every week, some child or some innocent person is being attacked or killed or whatever. And it seems like it's relentless. It's every week. We have 52 weeks in a year.
And again, the key is, and we are technically under state of emergency.
And we're under state of emergency.
Right? But again, let's take the logic further. The state of emergency was not preventing a murder like this. Only society, being a responsible village, has a chance of preventing a murder like this. It's like domestic murder suicides. Unless somebody reports it, the police is just not going to have a chance to intervene on that. Right? State of emergency don't matter. It don't matter in those cases.
And I've actually seen us responding to domestic violence where whether or not the murder could have been prevented, most times the parties don't want to continue with the action, with the police action.
Exactly.
They try to, they just want the violence to stop, like anybody else, any society. They just want the violence to stop. So, there is no...
It's human nature that people will hold on to what they perceive as important relationships. And I've seen stories and situations where the consequences are not as severe, but the signs were still just as readily apparent. This is not a healthy situation to be in, but they don't want to let go.
In the case of this murder, I understand there's somebody in custody, which is good that the police have been able to find some...
The thing is, to me, that just highlights how ridiculously hard it is for the police to prevent something like this. This is not no criminal mastermind.
But in this case, it's the police reaction.
But my point is, it's not as though it's some criminal mastermind who's hard to track and hard to find, and he's been on the run for months and years, and it's just due to incompetence. No, this is some random dude that just did one of the most heinous things.
A 12-year-old.
There you go. Let's take that last comment quick. I don't want to go for another show if we can. Context of the consideration of the cause and effect of the conclusion. Why run if you're innocent automatically raises concerns over the unwillingness to use body cameras and dashboard cameras. A lot. One of the things before you press send, maybe try to clear up the grammar just so it's easier to read. But I'll just say this. Running does not make you guilty. Right? Now, resisting arrest, there could be some degree of crime along that alley where you could be charged with that. But those are separate situations, and this is, I believe, the Joshua Samaru thing. Those are technically separate things, right? And more importantly, again, I'll always say this, the situation with body cameras is that let's just assume that Mr. Samaru, Miss Seeley, did everything wrong. Body cameras would have proven the officers then were in the right, and we wouldn't be in the situation we are now.
But Sean, I mean, the police, I indicated in our previous program that we do have body cameras. It's just that it's not overwhelmingly across the board and whatnot. We need more, and the conversations on the ground is that the officers want the body camera.
But here's the thing, the officers on the ground, in my opinion, should also push for this if they really want this body camera thing to shield them. The footage in some capacity has to be made available to people outside of the police service, otherwise it's not going to matter. It doesn't have to be to the general public. I remember I spoke to you about a case where there was a shooting, they showed it to the family of the deceased. that the off-duty officer shot.
That's outside of
This is in America.
Right.
And the point is, before the family was all up in arms, they killed my boy. They didn't condemn the family, they didn't bad talk the family, they didn't quarrel with the family. They just said, come in, we'll show you the footage.
Right.
The family saw the footage, the family came out, and kudos to them, they then retracted their accusations and basically said, look, the police officer, the young man, he did what, he was not in the wrong.
Right.
Our boy was in the wrong.
As far as I understand, the footage being, the body cameras being worn now by TTPS officers, especially in traffic branch and whatnot, because these are the guys on the ground most of the time, are not accessed by the TTPS.
Okay.
So it's accessed by a third party that...
Either way, and that might be a whole other procedural conundrum that needs to be sorted out.
Right.
But there needs to be some avenue that the body camera footage could then be viewed by someone whose task it is to ensure accountability, that the publics will accept their opinion.
It shouldn't be up to the TTPS to release that body cam. I mean...
In some jurisdictions it is, huh?
No, I don't think it should. I think it should be monitored by a third party and released.
The question is who? If it's a private contractor, I would say no.
Maybe PCA.
Maybe PCA.
Yeah, maybe PCA.
Maybe PCA.
Yeah.
All right, so with that said, feels like a long show. Thanks for joining me, SP Arun. Thanks to the callers, Mr. San Fernando. I think at least with Mr. Rima, Mr. San Fernando, there's a little more wind knocked out of your sails.
Yeah.
Mr. Clarkson Bay, I don't disagree with you. I just think the problem is, even with what is truth, we will debate. And at the end of the day, therein lies the problem. Politics turns everything into a debate, and we can't even sometimes agree what truth is, much less then what is the best way to move forward. And I guess that's if we could figure that out, then perhaps we could figure out some of the issues with society. We don't have to worry about the village that we lost and these guys attacking kids.
I just want to compliment the Victim and Witness Support Unit of the TTPS and in their moves to assist the family and members of the public who have been traumatized by this event. To assist them with overcoming and counseling and whatnot. They really help us a lot in most of our cases. These are civilians hired by the TTPS. These are not police officers that go out and venture out into all stations and districts, and any victims of crime, they assist with that. And I just want to thank them very much for their contribution to the fight against crime.
And I would bet you that a lot of people didn't know about this service, about these people doing this work, right? And it's just one of more things where it's a shame. I think Mr. Rima pointed out it's always negative, or Claxton Bay, it's always, Mr. Claxton Bay might have been the one to point out, it's always negative. No, Mr. Rima did, because she highlighted positive interactions from young officers. So here's the funny part, our negative news sells, but also it sells because people want to hear more about the negative stuff.
Yeah, because those accidents I witnessed over the weekend all had police officers there on the side of the road assisting them and whatnot.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the accidents were single vehicle accidents, and the officers were there to ensure safety and security and whatnot. And kudos to them as well.
So, I don't know. It comes back down to society. Not just the police, not just the politicians, not just the criminals, society, because they all come from us. So with that said, we're over time, so we'll close out here. Stay safe, remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Never forget, it's nice to be nice. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN